Hello, magic makers, and welcome back to the Metaphysical Apothecary. We are your hosts, Megan and Shannon. Say hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
We are also known as the Scorpio sisters, and we are here to explore the mysterious, magical, and the arcane. Today, we are going to discuss breaking the rules in magic. And what we mean by that, this is going to be a two-part series. When I first joined the magical community, I was coming out of an extremely rigid religious background. I was fleeing Christian dogma. I was fleeing homophobia and other kinds of bigotry and was looking for a spiritual path that I could really mold and craft and make my own. When I first stepped into the pagan world, I was bombarded by all of these rules, traditions, and paths that I was told by different sources I had to follow. If I didn't follow them, something terrible was going to happen to me. I was going to accidentally summon a malign entity, or I was going to attract hexes and curses to myself, or I was just going to have all this negative energy stuck to me. I've known people who have had similar experiences. So we're going to be talking about what some of those experiences were and how to get past them. Because most of the time, what we're told about these things, it's not a hard and fast thing that everyone has to follow.
So unlike Megan, when I entered the magical community, I came in from a very different perspective. I had already started exploring witchcraft and the different magical religions that are associated with witchcraft, from Wicca to Druidry. And being raised Catholic, I was already looking for a different path for myself. It just didn't align due to different events and with attending services. That just didn't feel right for me. And so I was already looking for more and doing my research on the religious aspect of things. And I kind of stumbled into the spiritual, non-religious side somewhere around college.
You were already pretty entrenched in it by the time we met, so.
Yeah, I started when I was 13.
Right.
All my religious research had started at the age of 13. By the time I was 17 and in college, first meeting Megan, I was well entrenched into understanding what I wanted to experience in my spiritual path. Beyond religion, tradition, my teenage years was about rebelling against the societal norms through my exploration of spirituality.
Yeah. My interests always skewed toward the magical and the enchanted. So when I entered the pagan world, there were a lot of these rules, and this was in the early 2000s. So the internet wasn't super comprehensive, and it was difficult to find or buy books on witchcraft. There was a lot of misinformation kind of floating around at that point. Rules like you must have a matron and a patron deity. You must follow the threefold law. You have to follow an established tradition like Wicca or Hellenism. You have to celebrate all of the Sabbats. And if you're not doing these things, you're a bad witch. You're going to attract negative energy to you. And that's just not true. The other thing that floats around a lot is just the fact of being a witch makes you very vulnerable somehow to spiritual attacks, and you should expect people to curse and hex you. Also not true. And I don't mean to make fun of anyone who is worried about this. It's just that if you think about it from the perspective of someone who's an experienced witch, then it just doesn't make any sense.
Usually the people who are laying down hexes and curses are fellow magic practitioners, and most of them don't have a grudge against each other.
No, most of the time they don't.
You're not likely to run into someone who just wants to hex you because you're a rival.
No. The rules that are so often pressed on newcomers, there's nothing inherently wrong with those things. If you want to have a matron and a patron, if there's a god and a goddess that you feel super connected to and you want to put them on your altar and you want an athame on one side and a chalice on the other, and if Wicca really speaks to you, go for it. If the threefold law is aligned with your values and your ethical point of view, ascribe yourself and your energy to the threefold law. Do those things.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to.
No, if it's not resonating with you, that rule does not apply. Find one that applies to your values and your principles and your ethics.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Shannon and I both have almost a dozen deities on our pantheons that we work with for different things.
I know witches who have patrons and matrons. It's just does not jive for how I interact with my divine energy.
And I'm sure that those witches that you know who have a matron and patron are very powerful people, and they know their craft and they understand their practice. For me as well, I don't necessarily jive with having a matron and patron. In fact, 7 out of my 10 gods are goddesses. All 3 of the remaining ones are gender fluid. They usually present as male, but they don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
They help me steward my chakra energy. That's how they're aligned for me. It's also totally okay to work with a deity, a set of deities, all of your deities for a certain length of time, and then allow them to kind of recede if it feels like the connection's not as strong as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very strong relationship for a long time with the Norse goddess Skadi and the Celtic god Hern. Eventually, they both stepped back and left room for Artemis to come waltzing in because I was not ready for her yet.
Deity that did something very similar for me was the Nordic god of the sea. He was very prevalent back in 2010, interacting with him a lot, feeling his energy in what I was doing and where I was thinking of going. Then it just faded. I didn't feel the need to grasp onto it. I didn't feel the need to hold him or anyone else. He stepped back. He faded from the pantheon.
Yeah. That's the other thing too, is that as long as you are pulling from open traditions, it's completely okay to mix and match your deities. Closed traditions and people from closed traditions are totally allowed to gatekeep. If you are unsure whether or not a tradition is closed, find someone who practices that tradition and consult them.
Mm-hmm.
It's also totally okay to practice witchcraft without deities at all.
One thing that I ran across, I'm sure Megan must have run across as well, while we were first diving into our own practices and our own spiritual path, was that you had to join a coven. There was pressure to join a coven.
Mm-hmm.
During my teenage years of trying to explore this path and see if it would work for me, I went so far as to try to create a coven in order to have a coven to practice it. It failed miserably. I am a solo practitioner who will sometimes come together with others, and have always been a solo practitioner who will sometimes come together with others.
Yep.
But there was the pressure that I felt in order to be a witch, you had to experience the coven, you had to be in a coven. And I didn't have the means of finding or going to an established coven in my area. If anything, I would have been far more wary of an established coven in my area because I was raised, be aware of strangers. They are not the only ones who are dangerous, but be aware of them.
Right.
Peer pressure from people who are not your peers is weird.
Yeah. And I think this is probably true for both of us, but I'm speaking for myself mostly. When I was looking for a coven as a young witch, it was really difficult for me to find a group that was aligned with the belief system that I was creating. I come to realize now that's because my belief system is unique to me. But at the time, I kept running across these groups that would be almost there, and then it would be something like a very richly defined druidic tradition, or they only followed Dianic witchcraft, where they were following an established path, and I needed to establish my own path.
Yeah. In our area, the only covens I knew of were Dianic or Alexandrian Wicca, and neither of those were what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I respected it. I used books and research material from Wicca in general as I was building my own path and my own craft. But I didn't want to go from a heavy hierarchy to magical setting that also has a hierarchy in place. Maybe not as heavy as the Catholic one.
Right. And that's the other thing that can be really damaging to people about pressuring them to find a coven too, is that many people are leaving behind religious dogma. So encouraging people to plunge themselves right back into a rigid hierarchy where they have to toe the line, whether or not it feels spiritually right to them, can be really traumatizing.
Yeah. That's all we have on the topic for today. Thank you so much for listening in, and we hope you'll join us again next time. In the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest, and go to our blog for some more witchy wisdom, as well as check out some of our original art on Society 6 for sacred decor and more. Thank you again for joining us, and go make some magic and live your best life. Bye!
Bye, everyone.